Hey guys, just wanted to bring a quick guide on how you can maximize your damage in Genshin. Now this is not a beginner guide talking about leveling your talents and equipping artifacts and using reactions. This is about getting the most damage you can out of what you have on your account. Now if you didn't know, all damage in Genshin Impact can be mathed out. If you give someone your attack, your EM, all the stats that matter, your motion values, they can figure out how much damage an ability or an attack is going to do without actually playing the game. So that means if you want to make your characters do as much damage as you can, you're going to have to do a little bit of maths. Now before you start whipping out your Excel and start theory crafting yourself, a group of developers quite a while ago made something that can help you guys out. So this is a website we'll be talking about today. It's called the Genshin Optimizer. It's an incredibly well made website. Huge credits to the team down here. They all did an amazing job. And this is what we're going to be using to help you max out your damage. Now what this website's going to be able to do is it's going to tell you exactly what artifacts and weapon you want to put on a certain character to make them do as much damage as possible. Now obviously before we get to that point there's a little bit of setup we have to do, so I'm going to show you how to do all that right now. Now the first thing we need to do is add in our artifacts. So you'll need to go on Genshin for this. Go to your artifact page in your inventory and take a screenshot of that part on the right with your artifact stats. Now you don't need to include that artifact description at the bottom there. Now we have to hop back into the optimizer and actually add in our artifact. Now as you can see I have a ton of my artifacts here already, but the process is the same for your first artifact or your 100th one. So I just have to press Ctrl V to put it in, paste it in, but you might have to drag it in if you took the screenshot a different way. And as you can see for my one, I already have this artifact in, so it's detecting a duplicate. But if it's your first one, it should detect the substats by itself. Just double check everything's correct. If it isn't, you can change it at the top. And then at the bottom, you should have an add artifact button. Mine says update, so I'm just gonna close this page. Now if you're crazy, you can add in every single plus 20 artifact you have, but realistically, you don't have time for that. So what you need to do is just look into your artifacts, add any that have really good substats, and add any that might have mediocre substats but are on set. So for example, if you have a really mid Electro Goblet on Emblem, you still probably want to add it because it might still show up in your Raiden's build. Now after you've been using the optimizer for a while, what I do is every time I roll a pretty good artifact, I just add it straight in. So after the initial adding of like 100 artifacts, it's pretty straightforward, you just add them one by one. Alright, now we have to add our weapons and characters. So if you go to the weapons tab at the top, you can just add any weapons you own or want to test with. I've added so many weapons, some of which I don't even own. For characters, just add whichever characters you want to optimize. I've added pretty much all of mine here. We're going to work with Raiden today. So once you've added your character, you need to make sure you level them to whatever level they are. So level 90 preferably. And then you go to the talents page, you also level up their talents. Now if you scroll down in the talents page, you'll see some stuff that needs to be enabled. This is just to tell the optimizer that you have these abilities active when it calculates your damage. And then finally, if you scroll down, we also have the weapon. So just equip that weapon you previously added to your character. We have Engulfing on Raiden. And then since Engulfing has a passive, we also have to enable that to the left. Now we're almost there. We just got to add our teammates now. So if you go into team buff section at the top, you'll see that I already have my 3 teammates there with a Raiden Hyper Carry team. Now with these teammates, some of them you will have to give artifacts and weapons to because they have buffs coming from them. For example, Sarah has a buff that scales of her attack, Kazuha has VV, and then we have Bennett with Noblesse. Now finally we have the optimize page, so this is where it's actually going to tell you which builds to use. There's a final bit of setup, so if we scroll down you're going to see select optimization target. If we click that, you'll see every instance of damage that Raiden can do. We're going to click her ult because that's her main source of damage, and that's just the initial slash. Now just under that you're going to see average damage and crit hit damage. You're going to make sure it's average damage. Now crit hit damage is just looking for the biggest possible hit that you can do, so it's not going to account for crit rate at all and just give you as much crit damage and attack percent as possible. Now if you scroll up, we also need to tell the optimizer which artifact sets are active. Now this doesn't matter at all for Raiden because she's always going to favor Emblem, but for some characters like Neuvillette or Wriothesley who might drain their health, you need to tell the optimizer that Marechaussee is going to be active, so it counts for the crit rate. And the same thing applies for characters like Fischl or Farina, who do a lot of their damage off-field. You're going to need to tell the optimizer that the Golden Troop is active because the character is off the field. Now there's one last thing you can do before you optimize, which is select the build constraint. Now once again, this doesn't really apply to Raiden, but for someone like Shao or Itto, you might want to tell the optimizer that you need a set amount of ER. So you can just select energy recharge, type 130 there, and then all the builds it will give you will always have at least 130 ER. And then finally you can just click the generate build button, and then it's going to give you your builds. Now once it's done, you can scroll down and just look at all the builds that it gives you. All of these builds are ordered in the strongest one to the weakest one, and you can see highlighted in red is what you chose to optimize under. If you click equip build in green there, it's going to equip these artifacts onto your character, so next time the optimizer knows that your character has these artifacts on. Now this doesn't matter if you're just building one character, but if you're building multiple, you're going to make sure you have these artifacts equipped. So we're going to use a Yelan as an example because she also uses Emblem. Now if you go into the equipped artifact configuration, you're going to see all the characters are highlighted. Now this means if I optimize Yelan, she's going to take from anyone's artifacts. Doesn't matter if a character is equipping them. So if we go back and generate the build, we'll make it one build so it goes a bit quicker. You're going to see that she actually takes Raiden's Feather. Now this is because Raiden's Feather is really good, super high crit value. Now if we go back up to the artifact configuration and click Raiden, so now that she's grayed out, this means Yelan won't take any of Raiden's artifacts because she has them equipped. So if I generate the build again, and I look at the build now, you'll see that she's no longer using Raiden's artifacts. She's now instead stealing from Nahida. Now there's one last thing we need to talk about, and that's for characters that have multi-hit combos who trigger reactions on different hits. Now Yoimiya is a really good example of this. Now if I scroll down and I just optimize based on Yoimiya's first hit, and then I tick the vaporize box there to make sure it's a vape, it's going to favor EM a lot because it's assuming all our damage is just this one vaped hit. When in reality, Yoimiya's 5-hit string actually only has 3 vapes. So what you can do instead is scroll up to multi-optimization target and add your own optimization target. So I have one called Yoimiya Shoot, and it's just a 5-hit combo with her first hit vaping, her third hit vaping, and her 5th hit vaping, which is what happens in the game. And if I optimize it now after changing the target to Yoimiya Shoot, it's going to take that all into account. I highly recommend you guys try out the optimizer. It's seriously going to help you maximize the damage that you can do on your account. And you might be surprised by some of the builds it will give you. Just for example, my Xiangling actually prefers to use a 2-piece Gilded and a 2-piece Glads rather than 4 Emblem, just because the substats are so much better. And that's definitely something I couldn't have figured out without the optimizer. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.